It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome, friends. 2 years ago, I put out a video titled, Rener Gracie is not the industry standard for BJJ. This video discussed the case of Francisco Iturralde, a Jiu-Jitsu coach, and a tragic case where one of his students, in a horrific training accident, was paralyzed and fortunately has made at least a partial recovery since then, is able to walk and do other things, but it was a whole big ordeal for all involved. Now, the discussion topic of the previous video was about how Rener Gracie inserted himself into this situation as an expert witness in the court and essentially declared himself and his very specific standards to be the industry standard for Jiu-Jitsu, and I discussed everything that was wrong with that. Please go and watch that video if you're interested in that. The public at large, however, turned this into a contest of who is right and who is wrong, the Jiu-Jitsu coach or the student who got injured. My friends, that's what insurance is for. So, this is something that could easily happen to any martial arts instructor or any martial arts student anywhere out there where any form of physical contact takes place. Accidents happen. Now, 2 days ago, Mr. Iturralde put out a public statement, and I'm going to read it and commentate on his statement. He says, "My name is Francisco Iturralde. I've been practicing Jiu-Jitsu since I was 7 years old. Now I am 33. Currently, I am an instructor, business owner of a Jiu-Jitsu academy, husband, father, and friend to over 100 of my students, and leader to affiliated gyms in Mexico and Texas, besides my academy in California. I grew up training under my brothers and my professor in my hometown of Guayaquil, Ecuador. At the age of 19, I was an excellence in the sport, and I achieved 5 world championships in my color belts. By the time I was 19, I was offered a job position teaching in New York City under Professor Fabio Clemente, who was the first ever Jiu-Jitsu teacher and business owner or academy owner in the city of New York. After being with him for a few years, I ended up moving to California, training under Professor Cobrinha, where I sharpened my skills and I made it to be one of the top 5 lightweight competitors in my generation. It was a lot of hard work and sacrifice, and all of my experience then helped me become the instructor and the person I am now. After living in Los Angeles and training under Master Cobrinha and his team, achieving many medals and titles, I decided to take a break from competition to focus on my true passion, which is teaching. Not just teaching competitors or kids who want to excel in Jiu-Jitsu the way I did, but actually teaching parents, families, and people who just need to de-stress and have fun with the art of Jiu-Jitsu." So I think it's important to note here, there have been so many character attacks on this Jiu-Jitsu instructor because of what happened. People painted him as the devil. People went on witch hunts and said some pretty horrific things without any knowledge of the instructor or what specifically happened. So I can see he's definitely a bit on the defensive end here, painting himself as, look, I'm not a monster. Understandable. He goes on to say, "I grew up training in a family environment with my friends and siblings all around me on the mats. So when I started teaching full-time, I wanted to replicate this camaraderie that I was brought up training with and give people a fun environment free of ego and a place where they can be safe, train, have fun with Jiu-Jitsu, and enjoy the art. That's when I moved to San Diego and took a job at Del Mar Jiu-Jitsu, where I taught classes for 3 years. In other words, he knows a thing or two about teaching Jiu-Jitsu, competing in Jiu-Jitsu, doing Jiu-Jitsu, etc., etc. Not an incompetent Jiu-Jitsu instructor by any stretch of the imagination. He goes on to say, "During the end of my time teaching there in December 2017, one of the worst tragedies I've experienced in my life happened." Part 2, the accident. Jack was an incredible athlete. Jack is the student who got injured. He had over a decade of wrestling experience and about 4 years of jiu-jitsu experience. He medaled in many tournaments, winning his weight and absolute divisions, also showing extreme skills and an aggressive style when competing. Jack's style and technique showed that he was a lot more skillful than any average white belt. Let's see. He competed against. His vast experience in wrestling made him a very skillful grappler and way beyond the level of the average white belt. So a popular narrative that was going around was Jack, the student who got injured, was this complete noob who was like, what's up, what's down, I don't know. So Mr. Iturralde is including this essentially to show, look, I wasn't just picking on a helpless white belt. We were having a legitimate sparring session. While we were practicing jiu-jitsu, my student Jack and I were sparring. We were in a sparring session. I was attempting a back take, and Jack attempted a Granby roll, which is a wrestling move to escape the back take. As a result of the exchange of technique, a tragic accident happened, and he hurt his cervical spine. Okay, so in the court case, per Rener Gracie's expert witness, he essentially said, and I covered this in detail, and I gave direct quotes, etc. I didn't make stuff up in my last video, that what happened essentially were dangerous techniques that should never happen in a jiu-jitsu class. Meanwhile, what actually happened? Techniques that are legal at white belt children's tournaments. Techniques that happen in any wrestling room. Techniques that happen all the time in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and generally don't result in catastrophic, horrific accidents. But this one did. And we can point fingers all we want. That doesn't stop the fact. That doesn't change anything. On with the letter. Though he went through a really difficult time initially, thanks to God, he recovered and is now a proof of a miracle and an inspiration for everyone who has gone through such an injury. He is climbing mountains, racing bicycles, and continues to inspire all who have ever been injured doing jiu-jitsu or any other combat sport. There is video footage of the incident that anyone can watch to see for themselves what happened. What is being said publicly is mostly assumptions from media and sensationalist websites trying to clickbait and make this accident look like an intentional, freak, or malicious event. It was actually a tragic freak accident. I would concur with that. Any grappler or fighter's worst nightmare. I do not believe anyone who would do this on purpose, especially not someone who trains jiu-jitsu and knows the importance of camaraderie and love for training partners. So, yeah, there was a lot of mudslinging, a lot of witch hunters basically saying, this guy did it on purpose. Yeah. If you have ever been in a teaching position, and, man, the idea that you would maliciously cripple one of your students on purpose is absurd to me. And yet, this narrative has been passed around the internet. I saw it so many times in the last 2 years. And one of the reasons I'm bringing this up again, not just because Mr. Iturralde shared this letter 2 days ago, but 2 days ago also, my wife heard about this incident for the first time, saw a post being shared around Facebook basically saying, who do we point fingers at, the instructor or the student? And she shared this with me, not realizing I'd already made a video about the topic. So here we are again, revisiting this. Part 3, the aftermath. Following the accident, I was forbidden to talk or have any contact with my student Jack. This goes against my nature. Usually when any of my students gets bumped or hurt, I truly care about them. I follow up with them the same day and the next day to make sure they're okay, and do everything I can to help them with their injuries. I've been on the receiving end of injuries myself, and my training partners have always been amazing to me whenever I got hurt. There should be more guys like that out there in the world. Man, I've received injuries and the guilty parties threw up their arms. Oh, not my fault. Not my fault you're crippled for life. It's all on you, bucko. That's the least expected whenever you get hurt at jiu-jitsu. Friends and partners check on you, take you to the hospital, and make sure you're fine and will be helped if you need anything at all. Right after the injury, I was forced by my employer to stay at the gym and continue teaching classes. I was a nervous wreck. I was scared of teaching. I was scared of sparring. I didn't even know if I could continue training jiu-jitsu. I couldn't believe the art I loved so much in a split second caused something so tragic. It broke my heart. I thought I was never going to be able to teach, train, or compete in jiu-jitsu again. I was truly traumatized. Soon after that, I had to quit my job as an instructor at Del Mar Jiu-Jitsu. I just couldn't teach. I felt sick every time I stepped on the mats. This was 100% trauma inflicted by the accident or how powerful the impact was on my psyche. Now, I've read some really interesting studies about PTSD because this is a topic that interests me a lot as a retired fighter and a combat sports coach. And the data show something very counterintuitive to what most people think. Most people think if you are the injured party, you have experienced trauma, and you have, but the greater amount of post-traumatic stress generally falls on those responsible for inflicting the trauma. Whether intentional or unintentional, and that is definitely showing here. Since I was forbidden to reach out and talk to Jack because we were informed that a lawsuit was going to be filed and communications were restricted to lawyers, I had to accept and do as they instructed. If I didn't, I would have been left alone in the legal battle and completely liable. I purchased a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, hoping to somehow help Jack find peace in his mind during this tragic time, but my employer interfered in the delivery of the book. It was not allowed. The insurance company lawyers forbade me from any contact with Jack or his family as they were handling the defense. I had no choice but to follow orders and move on with my life. Thanks to Rener Gracie, who convinced me to keep teaching, I was able to find some hope. If it wasn't for him, I might have quit jiu-jitsu completely. Clark opened the doors of his studio, trusted me, and gave me classes to teach. I taught there for 3 years before opening my own studio, continuing my mission with my students. The trial was not justice. I find it ironic that justice and law are not the same. Plaintiff lawyers tried to prove I was reckless, pushing Jack beyond his limits. They manipulated evidence and prevented us from showing Jack's wrestling expertise, his prior tournament experience, and other signs of his skill. Despite being a white belt, Jack was a highly skilled grappler with great technique and physicality. Yeah, I've read the court documents, I've read the court transcripts, and yeah, he's absolutely right. They painted it as this guy is a monster who was deliberately inflicting harm on this completely helpless, brand new student with doughy eyes. Yeah, it's legalese, lawyer talk. That sort of thing happens all the time, and it definitely happened in this court case. Because the lawsuit was for a large sum, it was something like $49 million, give or take a few $1,000,000. I'm sure many were interested in profiting from it, and yeah, they were, including some of the expert witnesses who made $139,000 for giving their testimony against Francisco Iturralde, not to mention any names, Rener Gracie. Yeah, that happened. That was a real thing that happened. The insurance company left me thinking that if they lost, I would be liable for the full amount, so I was forced to stay quiet and say only what they allowed. During the trial, plaintiff lawyers lied about me, suggesting my nickname implied recklessness and danger. I believe Mr. Iturralde's nickname, his fight nickname, which is very common in jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, etc., sinestro, like sinister, or left-handed in some languages. And yeah, my fight nickname, the Danger. Now imagine if one of my students had a horrific accident while sparring with me, and then the lawyers were like, look, his fight nickname is The Danger, obviously. It's dangerous to spar with this guy. It's dangerous to train with him. Don't trust him. He's the danger. I mean, it sounds stupid, but when you're making appeals to emotion, and lawyers often will, especially in a case like this, they're going to latch on to whatever they can. They fabricated claims that this wasn't the only lawsuit against me, which is false. Injuries have happened over my years in Jiu-Jitsu, as with anyone. But we always checked on each other and helped each other recover. Lawyers painted me as a terrible human being, which is not true. I am a caring instructor and father. I have been a vegetarian for over 10 years. Yeah, he's even a vegetarian, my goodness. And cannot imagine harming any living being. I've never done anything violent in my life. To me, Jiu-Jitsu is a sport and a lifestyle, not fighting. It's about bonds and community. Because of objections and trial procedures I did not understand, I was unable to defend myself fully. The trial was set up so I would be found liable. Not only I, but also the studio and insurance companies were ordered to pay $52 million to the plaintiff. Part 4. Closing. Thank you for taking the time to hear my side of the story. In the last year or so, I have been the victim of constant harassment, internet trolls messaging me, people calling my phone and leaving threatening messages, wishing me the worst, and saying they will make me pay for what happened. I hope that those who took the time to search my personal information and contact me with ill wishes will also take the time to read this statement and understand the other side of the story. Man, that gets me in the feels, man, because just having a YouTube channel, not being involved in a high-profile case like this, but just having a YouTube channel, I get threats, I get harassment, I get internet trolls, I've received death threats, I've had people wishing me the worst, and all of the things on this list, and I can't imagine to a much greater extent Mr. Iturralde must have faced these sorts of things. And I get this stuff like every day. And what have I done? I've made YouTube videos teaching you guys to get out there and train. Meanwhile, the people of the internet, that Ramsey Dewey telling us to get out there and train. I hate his guts. Let's kill him. Yep, that sort of thing happens. So when you have sensationalist headlines painting a human being as a monster, man, I don't even want to read the things that people have sent to Mr. Iturralde. That's got to suck. Be better, people. Be better. Do your due diligence and find out the facts before you try jumping down somebody's throat like that. In conclusion, Mr. Iturralde says, I believe many have fallen for clickbait that is wrongfully and sensationally simplistic, designed just to get more views for attention. But the truth is different. This is the truth told by the person who lived it. I love you all, Jiu-Jitsu community. Jiu-Jitsu has given me the greatest purpose in my life and will keep giving back to this art until my last breath. Sincerely, Francisco Iturralde, instructor and owner, Gentle Arts Jiu-Jitsu. So, man, that sucks. Absolutely sucks he's gone through that, and as I said in the previous video, my heart goes out to both Mr. Iturralde and the injured party, and I hope they can both find peace in this situation. The takeaway here, guys, as Francisco put it out there, it's really easy to fall for clickbait headlines. There are so many of them. So many misleading headlines, so many straight-up lies out there about people, about institutions. I cannot stress enough the importance to do your due diligence. Do your homework first before you start spreading rumors. Before you start clicking share on that wild Facebook post that made you feel angry, maybe think critically about it for a few moments. Is this real? Can I fact check this? Can I check a second source or a third? That might be a good idea. It rarely isn't. Thanks for watching. Remember, Jesus has your back, friends. Now get out there and train.